Hey class, in today's lesson we're going to talk about rational exponents, which is found in section 6-4, part 2 of your book. In this section, our objective is to use rational expressions or exponents. Okay, so this is just a reminder of power rules, honestly. The first one is saying a to the nth power times a to the nth power. Remember, when you're multiplying powers, you're really adding the exponents. The second one is a power raised to a power. Remember, when you do that, that means that you are multiplying the powers. The second one is a product raised to a power. Remember, there you can split and distribute your power. On the second column, we have a base raised to a negative power. Remember, when you have negative exponents, to make them positive, you move them over the fraction bar line. The next one we have is dividing powers. So remember, you keep the base and subtract the powers. And the last one, we have a quotient raised to a power. And remember, that's almost the same. You would just distribute your power to both the numerator and the denominator. So let's take a look. All right, so an example 4 says, what is the simplified form of the expression? So we have the 4th root of x cubed divided by the 8th root of x squared. So what we want to do is, the first thing we want to do is, first of all, these cannot be simplified as is in radical form because they do not have the same root. So we need to change them to exponential form. So when we change them to exponential form, remember, the power is the numerator and the root is the denominator. So this would be x to the 3/4 divided by x to the 2/8. Okay? And that makes this nice because they have the same base, so we can then subtract the powers. So this would become x to the, and as far as numerators or as powers, you do the numerator first. So 3/4 minus 2/8. I went ahead and kept it as 2/8 rather than change it to 1/2. You can change it to 1/2 because either way you're going to need to get a common denominator. And so our common denominator here should just go ahead and be 8. So we need to multiply the first one by 2/2. All right, so that's going to give us x to the 6/8 minus 2/8, which equals x to the 4/8, which of course then we could say is x to the 1/2. And then finally you need to change it back to radical form. So this is really x to the 1/2 or the square root of x. Preferably I like square root of x. All right, let's try the next one. So again, the first one, they cannot be simplified because they have different roots, but it's nice because we see our bases and they're the same, so we should be able to change them to exponential form to be able to simplify. So this will give us x to the 3/2 divided by x to the 2/3. Okay, so again, we will keep our base and we will subtract. So that's 3/2 minus 2/3. Okay, they need a common denominator, and that common denominator is going to be 6. So we're going to multiply the first fraction by 3 and the second one by 2. Okay, that will give us x to the 9/6 minus x to the 4/6. And once you subtract those, you will get x to the 5/6 or the 6th root of x to the 5th. Either you can keep it on the inside or you can say 6th root of x raised to the 5th. It doesn't matter. So any of these three answers are correct. All right, let's take a look at the next one. I'm going to kind of split this a little bit. All right, so we have the square root of 3 times the cube root of 3. Again, they have different radicals or different roots, so it seems as if we can't multiply them, but we can. We just need to change them to exponential form. So this will be 3 to the 1/2 times 3 to the 1/3. Okay, keep the base, which is 3, and multiply the power. So that's add the power. So that's 1/2 plus 1/3. Okay, so when we add those powers, we again need a common denominator, and that common denominator again is going to be 6. So we're going to multiply this one by 3/3 and this one by 2/2. So that will give us 3 to the 3/6 plus, let me kind of get rid of that, plus 2/6, which is going to be 3 to the 5/6, or the 6th root, and that's a huge 6. I need to make that a lot smaller. or the 6th root of 3 to the 5th. Or, and honestly, we need to go ahead and simplify that. So that would give you, let's see, 3. About 2 let's go ahead and say about 2.5. All right, so again, either you can write as 3 to the 5 6, or the 6th root of 3 to the 5th, or about 2.5. Preferably, I would like the first two answers. One of the first two answers. All right, example 5. Now we're simplifying numbers with rational exponents. Okay, so the first one, it says 16 to the negative 2/5. Just as before, when we had a decimal, we need to change those decimals to fractions. So this is really negative 2 1/2. Actually, let's go ahead and change this to positive in the beginning. Okay, so the first way to make this positive is that you have to say 1 over 16 to now the positive 2.5. Okay, and then 2.5, I'm going to do this out to the side. 2.5 is really 2 1/2, right? And so to make that improper, 2 times 2 is 4 plus 1 is 5, so that's 5/2. So this is really 1 over 16 to the 5/2. Okay, and then after that, you need to then change that to radical form. So that'd be 1 over the square root of 16. Let me write it a different way, because now it's going to be easier to see. The square root of 16, but it's raised to the 5th power. Now we know what the square root of 16 is. The square root of 16 is 4, so this is really 4 to the 5th, or 1 over 1024. Okay, so again, I'm going to point out this is a great time to use that second form. Okay, instead of just putting the power on the inside of the radicand, it's better to put the numerator on the very far outside of the whole radical. Okay, so we'll try that again with the next one. Okay, so this is negative 32 to the 4/5. So that really means that it's the 5th root of negative 32, but it's raised to the 4th power. Okay, we know the 5th root of negative 32. We should know that by now as negative 2. But just to prove, that's 2 and 16, 2 and 8, 2 and 4, 2 and 2. We have 5 2's there. And since it's the 5th root of a negative number, your answer is still going to be negative. So this is really... All right, sorry about that. So that's going to be negative 2 to the 4th power. And negative 2 then to the 4th power is going to be 16. Right? So our answer will be 16. Let's go ahead and look at our try. All right, so it says, what is each number in simplest form? So we have 32 to the negative 3/5. Remember, in order, we need to change that negative power to a positive, so it's really going to be 1 over 32 to the 3/5. And so then that becomes 1 over the 5th root of 32 and then raised to the 3rd power. So this is going to be the 5th root of 32 again is 2, and then 2 cubed is 8. So I can say 1 over 2 cubed, or I can say 1/8. Both are acceptable. Okay, 16 to the 3/4 is the 4th root of 16 raised to the 3rd power. Okay, the 4th root of 16 is 2. And then again, 2 cubed is going to equal 8. So 2 cubed or 8 is fine. Finally, let's go ahead and change this to a positive by saying 1 over 9 to the 3.5. 3.5, remember, is really 3 1/2. And then to change that to a mixed number, you say 2 times 3, which is 6 plus 1 is 7. So that's 7/2. So this is really going to be 1 over 9 to the 7/2. And so really that means 1 over the square root of 9 raised to the 7th. So you can either keep it as that, or the square root of 9 is 3. And then 3 to the 7th, let me check it out on my calculator. It's 2,187, so 1 over 2,187. One of those two answers. All right, one more example. All right, so now we're writing expressions in simpler form. All right, so there's quite a bit going on here. The very first thing I would do is change this radical to a exponential form. So this is really negative 8x times xy to the 1/2. And then this is all being raised to the 2/3. Okay, so then we can split and distribute. So I'm going to split the negative 8 from the x and the x from the xy. And that's being raised here to the 2/3, 2/3, and 2/3. Okay, so I can rewrite this as negative 8 to the 2/3, x to the 2/3, and then xy, xy to the 1/2, but then raised to the 2/3. Okay, so negative 8 to the 2/3 is really the cubed root of negative 8 squared, which is really negative 2 squared, which is 4. So this is 4. And then we're going to bring down x to the 2/3. Okay, xy to the 1/2, remember that's a power raised to a power, so you got to multiply them. So you get 2/6, and 2/6 reduces down to 1/3. I'm going to write that xy is really going to be 2/6, which means it's really 1/3. And so finally, to change it back into a radical form, we're going to put it over here. Well, one more step before we put it all in radical form. So then our final answer, if I put it in radical form, you can either leave it in exponential form or put it in radical form, and that should be 4 the cubed root of x squared, and then the cubed root of actually we're not done, cube root of xy. Okay, but since these are cube roots, we can really put these two cube roots together, right? So 4 is still out. And then we have the cube root of x squared, which is x times x, right? From here, x squared, which is x times x. And then we still have another xy. But since it's cube root, that x can come out. So now our final answer, I promise, is now really our final answer. Your final answer is going to be 4x cubed root of y. That's it. All right, let's go ahead and work this next one. All right, the very first thing we want to do is the actual power, this negative 3/4, we need to make it positive. So this is going to be 1 over 16y. This is still negative 1/8. Okay, 16y to the negative 1/8 raised to the positive 3/4. Okay, then again, we're going to split and distribute. So the 3/4 goes there and here. This is going to be 1 over 4th root of 16 to the 3rd. And this y to the negative 1/8, let's just keep it negative 8 for now because we're going to see something. Negative 8 raised to the 3/4. Okay, the 4th root of 16 is 2, and 2 cubed is 8. So this is 1 over 8. But then negative 8 times 3/4 would give you negative 24 over 4, which is really negative 6. So this is y to the negative 6. And so finally, to make that positive, we're going to move that to the top. So this answer is going to be y to the 6th over 8. Let's go ahead and take a look at our try. All right, finally we have 8x to the 15th raised to the negative 1/3. So the first thing we want to do is make this positive by putting this 1 over 8x to the 15th raised to the positive 1/3. Okay, we're going to split and distribute. So this is going to become 1 over 8 to the 1/3 times x to the 15th to the 1/3. This is really the cubed root of 8, right? Cube root of 8. And we know the cube root of 8 now is 2. 15 times 1/3 is 5, right? Because it's really 15 over 3, so this becomes x to the 5th. And that is our final answer. Remember, guys, if you need any additional help, please come see me for tutoring.